Well, thank you very much. This is wonderful to be presenting live at Planet MicroCap. I think this is one of our first live conferences for the company coming out of the pandemic. Thank you all for coming to this live presentation, and welcome to everyone on the webcast. For those of you listening in digitally. Well, before I begin, I guess kind of broad thing. We're at a MicroCap conference. A lot of growth companies. I've sat in a few presentations myself. It's pretty intriguing, different kind of investment opportunities, and a lot of them are growth opportunities at these sizes in terms of companies and early, and they're have a very clear investment thesis. I think when investors are listening to presentations, like we're looking for good investment ideas, right? We're looking for opportunities that have a fair value. They have some sort of underlying value creation plan over time. They're rationally thought out. Growth companies, I think one of the key things is to be able to communicate clearly about a roadmap, how you get from point A to point B, and how that value is going to be created. A lot of investors also look for liquidity. That's an important consideration when you're investing in a public company. And at the end of the day, I think a big part of this is evaluating the underlying risks associated with these products that are in development. So this is an early stage company that I'm going to get into, but I thought I could lay some background in terms of a historical context. Before I begin though, just a reminder, we are a public company. Please review our risk factors and review our, I'll be making forward-looking statements, so review our risk factors in our SEC filings. So before we jump into the forward part of it, I wanted to give you the backward part of it in terms of context. From a historical perspective, I think there's been a lot of great innovation and work that dates back decades in the cannabinoid pharmaceutical space. That started in a laboratory in Israel in terms of the isolation of cannabinoids in the early 60s, then the discovery of the endocannabinoid system, which is a network of important receptors that have important pathways to modulating a lot of different diseases. We have then the use of legalization of cannabis, and then the use of cannabis over the counter, as well as the increased use of cannabinoids for medical purposes. You heard of CBD being used for medical purposes. We also had the first FDA-approved plant-derived cannabinoid medicine. In this room today is a couple of those people that actually worked on that drug. And then we also have additional innovation that's continuing to happen in terms of new forms of synthetic cannabinoid derivatives. So unattached to the plant, but similar chemistry that can emulate the same properties. And that's been fascinating. This is important to highlight in terms of the inflection that's happening. So there's this time aspect, but like all classes of pharmaceuticals, everything you look at, cancer immunotherapy, infectious diseases, and they all have a 30-year or 20-year or 40-year time horizon before they hit that inflection. And I think we're finally seeing that wave happen because there's been some wonderful case studies of companies that have done really well in terms of launching products. So this is what gets me to this next important kind of case study. Well, we've heard in 2021, there was a pretty impressive deal that was inked by GW Pharma. It was acquired by Jazz Pharmaceuticals. Now, that was from their lead drug for Epidiolex for a rare form of epilepsy. That drug has now subsequently, based on its approval, generated a significant amount of sales. So 269 now, as of 2021, upwards of 600 million, going to 700 million a year. Blockbuster in terms of when you look at this from a drug development perspective and the magnitude that was paid, quite impressive. However, it's only on this one particular drug, and the neurological pipeline that extends from that is quite large in itself. And that's what, if you look at Jazz Pharmaceuticals pipeline, they have kind of their different pillars of different things that they were working on. Neurological was one of them. This slotted really well into a development pathway. Just to highlight that we're really starting this new chapter in terms of cannabinoids being a opportunity for large pharma. I think when you look at the macro perspective, and by the way, I historically have come from a cancer immunotherapy space, so I've seen this kind of transpire in that arena in the last 10 years, where you had a single drug in terms of a new innovative therapy in immunotherapy get approved in 2011, and then it opened up the wedge for a whole cascade of new drug and immunotherapies. And now today, if you're diagnosed with cancer, you have a very good chance of surviving and undergoing kind of chronic treatment. Same thing applies here in terms of this opportunity. Intellectual property continues to be a scarce commodity for big pharma. They have to fill their pipelines with new modalities, new classes of medicine, and this class of medicine is unique in itself. And this is where Skye is focused in, no pun intended, in the ocular space. So we're looking at a synthetic cannabinoid based approach based on patented drugs. So you can look at this as ordinary pharmaceutical development, and we're developing unique drugs for that. So our investment summary is quite simple. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm gonna walk you through the highlights, right? Obviously, there's a lot more detail that we don't have enough time to get into in a 30-minute presentation. But I want to highlight the key points and then save time for questions. And then afterwards, Bernie's here with me. He's head of IR and corporate communications. I'll be around the conference. We'll be here for one-on-ones. So please, follow up. We're taking this very bold approach in terms of evaluating the same types of receptors that are found in these neurological disorders or other disease modalities that are found in the eye. And though that's meant to unlock the full potential of what cannabinoids can offer for diseases specific to the eye. First molecule that's in development is going after the specific mechanism, which is targeting CB1, the CB1 receptor. And that program is geared towards glaucoma. It's entering into the phase 1 clinical trials this quarter. And then we have plans to enter into phase 2 later this year. Both trials don't necessarily have to be done sequentially. They're just being followed through in terms of 2 different regulatory pathways. Phase 1 for us is showing that it's safe and tolerable. Phase 2 is geared towards efficacy. It's definitely a transformative new class, and we'll get into what that means. In the area that we're focused, no other current drugs that are in development or current drugs that are approved are working in the same class. So that's unique in itself. This is underpinned or underscored by a very clear preclinical and clinical foundation. Preclinical that we've done and all of the clinical enabling stuff that is leading to our clinical trials. But from a clinical standpoint, there is actually dozens of literature out there that have shown clinical studies of similar molecules like molecules in terms of showing the application in glaucoma. We've built a network of academic partners, and now that's working towards industry partners. From the academic side, we're working with the leading cannabinoid researchers in the world. There's probably over 100 or 200 publications between the scientists that we're working with in terms of the different universities. There's a lot of expertise on the ophthalmology side on our board. A few of our board members have launched several of the drugs that are standard of care today. And then similarly on the clinical advisory board and scientific advisory board, and I'll get into that. The key thing here is that the roadmap. The roadmap for the investment thesis for drug development is ultimately exit. Exit is based on a strategic event, a licensing event, or if you're lucky, in terms of what GW was able to accomplish, a full-out acquisition for a huge multiple. And that's what we're trying to demonstrate, is that this team that's been assembled, I joined this company in August of 2020, employee number 1 after taking over the prior management. Brought my team together that I've worked with for over 2 decades in different companies, and we are following that same business plan in terms of getting through development, de-risking, and we want to demonstrate to investors 40x, 50x, 100x return on their invested capital based on a clear development pathway. Why are we focused on the eye? Well, there's a huge thing, I think, at a macro level, that there's this underlying problem. Some of it we don't even know yet. Think of how much time we spend on screen time. And we don't know what the outcomes, what the results of those are going to be, 20, 30 years from now. But in terms of data points, 80% of what we perceive comes through our sense of sight. Such an important part of our essential kind of organs. the decreasing of the eyesight, it has the ability to impair a lot of different things, and quality of life is one of them. And when you have reduction in vision loss, I think that leads to, we believe that leads to other disease characteristics as well, depression, diabetes, the other types of impairment, overall decline, and the decline in quality of health. Large burden in terms of healthcare. If you look at it from, again, these are macro numbers. It's a $139 billion industry in terms of focusing on vision-related disorders, and there's continued growth that's happening there because the market continues to grow. Now, we are focusing in. I'm not saying we're tackling all of that market today. Our initial market is targeting about a $6 billion, $7 billion market in glaucoma, and the current class of drugs are all in the same class. There hasn't been really any new innovation in glaucoma, and there's a tremendous market opportunity for a new class of drug to come and disrupt that space. And when you look at it from an industry perspective, in terms of this class that's currently in development, from phase 1 all the way to pre-registration, quite a number of different companies, but again, all targeting prostaglandins, beta blockers or other existing drugs that are all like-minded, like classes that are already commercialized. So there's a significant opportunity here for patients that need new innovation because they develop resistance over time to these drugs. They cannot have them forever. There's usually a treatment paradigm that moves from single agents to combinations or rotation of drugs. So there is a need here in terms of an unmet opportunity for patients, as well as from the intellectual property side for pharma. Now, in terms of the mechanism, when you're talking about glaucoma, basically you can think about it as a pressure that's building up in the eye, and it's impacting the optic nerve in the back of the eye. So this fluid called aqueous humor in the eye needs to be drained, and there is a specific drainage mechanism that is linked to cannabinoids that makes it very intriguing in terms of this unique mechanism. And these CB1 receptors that are linked to the molecule that we're delivering help to improve that drainage of that fluid, thereby releasing the pressure off the optic nerve. And that's the main disease modifier we're looking for, is reduction of intraocular pressure. There's been, like as I alluded to earlier, there has been a lot of literature. Most of that literature has been based on smoking cannabis, which isn't really a clear pathway from a drug development perspective. So we're talking about a very clear defined dose with a dosing regimen and a drop that's going into the eye. And that's where this is a very interesting, effective approach. Our prodrug is taking this unique delivery that we've attached to it, molecule that we've designed, and that's allowing it to enter into the eye and get to the key components of the eye. If you delivered the active component, THC, on its own, it wouldn't get to the eye. It's lipophilic, and it's not easily delivered into the eye topically. So what we're doing with SBI-100, OE stands for Ophthalmic Emulsion, is getting it to the trabecular meshwork and binding to the CB1 receptor. Now, we've demonstrated superior intraocular pressure lowering compared to standard of care, both in single agent studies as well as in combination. So that's kind of an important measure here in terms of why we feel that this is making a lot of sense in terms of a drug development path. So this has been done in rabbits. That's the common model that's used for ocular diseases. And we've shown in preclinical studies on the left, your left side here, single agent that is longer duration and larger drop in IOP. And then on the right side is in combination with the leading standard of care. So just the key takeaways here is that it's targeting an area of disease that other drugs aren't doing a very good job of. It's going after the specific mechanism that allows for this drainage to occur by targeting the trabecular meshwork, and specifically a component in that. It's getting the molecule is reaching to that, and it's improving the other pathways as well. there is we won't get into it today, but we also feel that there's opportunities at a broader multifactorial mechanism standpoint of components that could be underlying the disease. So anti-fibrosis, anti-inflammation, and those kind of things. And we have research data or preclinical data that shows that. Why I highlight that is the holy grail in terms of showing the neuroprotective capabilities of what you can offer these types of patients. Today's drugs aren't targeting that, and our class of medicine has the opportunity to target that. Now, there's a difference there. One is focusing on developing a drug only for that, which is a tough hurdle in itself because you want to streamline regulatory development and go after the fastest path to approval from a competitive standpoint, and that's lowering intraocular pressure as a measurement that's been used for development. But certainly, in terms of a long-term opportunity and why this is something that is something to pay attention to and big pharma to pay attention to is the unique capability on the neuroprotective side. The phase 1 design, standard phase 1 SAD-MAD design for the non-pharma development people here, we're just basically enrolling patients in cohort 1, cohort 2, cohort 3. We have a safety review, and then we start this multi-ascending dose in part B. So it's 8 patients per cohort, 48-patient trial. We expect to have this enrollment very quickly once the study is started. It's going to be done in Australia. We get reimbursement back for the R&D work that we do there. All right. I guess you guys are giving me signals? No, I have lots of time.
Now, let me ask you a question. So most of the people, like as you get older, the glaucoma comes, correct? Like,
yeah. So it is
elderly patients that are easier because everybody.
There is an age-related component.
Baby boomers are coming, so you know.
Yeah. So there's definitely different types of demographics here, but age-related ocular diseases are definitely a component. And it's a good segue to this next part because we are focused, on this clear clinical development plan for glaucoma, which is where I spent the majority of my time. But in drug development, there's a lot of other things that we're also doing under the hood, and what we call the Cannabinoid Pharmaceutical Innovation Program, or CPIP. Acronyms aren't really my thing, so we can work on that later. But the main takeaway is that from a mechanism standpoint, we're targeting different disease pathologies that are linked to cannabinoid receptors. So there's just 4 that have been identified here, but there's more even that we can add to this. But just for simplicity's sake, 4 receptors that are commonly found in the eye, all linked to ocular pathologies. We already talked about lowering intraocular pressure. We can hopefully reduce pain. We can show anti-inflammation, wound healing, neuroprotection, anti-fibrosis. So there's an active amount of work here that's being done in terms of Skye building out its platform for an ophthalmology pipeline. So this is a visual of that. We have a pretty active discovery engine, lots of our own molecules. We have quite a large library of our own. I won't say the number right now because we're in the process of several different patent filings. We do have our own proprietary screening where we're seeing the activity of those molecules on particular ocular diseases, and then that's helping in terms of a decision flow for the in vivo model that's linked to a particular disease, and then that ultimately leads to a candidate selection for an ocular indication. So I inherited, or our management team inherited, the decision for glaucoma. Certainly, there's a lot more opportunities than just glaucoma. So we have a very stage gate-driven approach in terms of our pipeline expansion, and that's what this program's about. And we are spending R&D dollars on that. So back to the investment thesis. We have a strong balance sheet to execute on our clinical program. Clearly, we're an early-stage company, so not to say that we're not going to go and raise more capital. But there's definitely different avenues to raise capital. Equity markets, the team that is working on this together, we've accessed a lot of capital in different companies that we've been a part of. The second opportunity is looking for strategic opportunities in the current market. There seems to be some interesting, consolidation and compression in the marketplace. So there are certainly companies out there with balance sheets. And third is strategic opportunities in terms of partners, collaborators, pharma. And that's where I think our strongest suit is in terms of our group. We've done deals with Merck, with Roche, with other big pharma in many different types of settings, and we're looking to replicate that in the ocular space here with this platform. So the upcoming catalyst, phase 1 is our core focus right now, so you can look forward to those boxes being checked off next time we connect. And phase 2 is what's going to be coming up next, and that's also slated before the end of the year. So lots of things happening. We've been a very active company over the last 18 months, and I'm really proud of the team. This is the core management team. We have a very lean group in terms of who's doing it. So a lot of us wearing different hats because we are a small company. But in terms of the broader support, all the key components we need for clinical development. And then the board of directors, ophthalmology experience, cannabinoid experience, and then drug development experience. So we've done a lot of different deals together. There's also individually, we've been part of some different companies and different opportunities, and all of that's been great in terms of decision making and the speed that we're working at. And same thing on the advisory side. So ophthalmology focus, glaucoma focus, cannabinoid focus, and everything that we need in terms of expediting our decision-making process. With that, we still have time for questions. Thanks.
Well done. Can you tell me, is your compound, is it considered Schedule 1 currently?
Yeah. So sorry. Repeat the question. The question was our compound considered Schedule 1? And Schedule 1 is drugs that are going through an FDA process that are still under the same controls under the DEA. So everything that we do is under the approval pathway. We have to do regulatory approval through DEA to work on our drug. So all of our vendors have all qualified for DEA approval and all that. But yes, it is a Schedule 1 drug, but we're following the FDA pathway. Yeah.
Same question. Do you know if it's peripherally restricted?
The question is whether it's peripherally restricted. So yeah, toxicity studies have revealed. So yeah, it's a really good containment, but we haven't published on that set of data yet. But we're looking forward to doing that. Yes.
With respect to glaucoma application, looking at addressing or fixing the cause of the pressure, or are you talking about long-term management to keep the pressure down?
Okay, great question. So the question is whether we're focusing on reducing the pressure by actually mechanistically driving that, or just long-term having kind of a broader lowering of intraocular pressure or other side. And the answer to that is we're going straight for the mechanism. So what's unique here is that because the CB1 receptor is found on these components of the trabecular mesh, like the Schlem canal and the uvea sclera, we are getting that specific pathway that's opening that drainage pathway up that allows for that fluid to come to dissipate. So we believe, mechanistically, we're targeting the underlying challenge here that a lot of drugs haven't been able to effectively. There are some broader opportunities in terms of what the molecule is doing in terms of hopefully having other benefits, and that's this kind of the secondary endpoints that we'd have to look for.
So that's like the wave. So if you get this done, and all of a sudden you have 4 other things to go after right away.
Yeah, I mean, from a drug development standpoint, the standard for glaucoma development is the primary endpoint has been showing lowering of IOP, and that's where we're focused on. But certainly, we're looking at other biomarkers and other things that help us show the mechanism at play for this molecule in other areas. But from a regulatory pathway, we just want to be very clear.
The other things, those drugs are just dealing with symptoms.
No, they have their own unique. Some of them have their own unique approach to reducing, but patients develop resistance to those over time. And that's been the frustrating and challenging part for this disease, is that you get patients that have to come off drug, go on a combination or something else.
So you're obviously saying this is a chronic therapy, but once or twice a day application?
Yeah, so the question is whether this would ultimately be a chronic therapy. This would be, right now, we want to compete in that particular market, but certainly, as the data shows, maybe there's going to be improvement, but we don't have that information yet.
Another thing is all those check boxes they go to check over with our news announcements that will be coming out.
Yeah, I think so. This is our first conference. Thanks, Blair, for asking that question. So first conference in a while, but we're getting out here to talk about what this company is working on, and you can look forward to kind of all these developments, and we have a couple more conferences this month, so stay tuned.
Yes, a lot of news coming up.
Yep. Okay, great. I'm out of time. Thank you very much.